just gone live for the first time in the history of Unity of Auburn. We've done a couple of dry runs and they seem to work pretty well, so we hope that we've got the some of the, how shall we say, glitches ironed out. We're doing something that sounds kind of strange. We're doing social distancing via social media, but that's how that works. You know, everybody talks about how social media and Facebook and Twitter, oh, it's separating us and keeping us apart. Well, it's kind of important right now, and it turns out that this technology is going to be a benefit to a lot of different people. So we're very pleased to be able to do this morning. And I ask you, where else can you go to church in your PJs while drinking coffee and eating a donut? All of that can happen. Nobody cares. Nobody knows. And the other thing I just want to say up front, there's a word and a phrase that I want to sort of encourage us to delete from our vocabulary. The phrase is new normal. And the word is apocalypse, okay? We're going to drop those words because it is neither of those things. We're here to assure each other, to support each other, and to affirm that we're going to get through this. So we deny the power of that kind of language and thinking. We let it go and we affirm that we are here to support each other and get through this as a community. Well, back in 2013, Karen and I attended a 3-day seminar that was sponsored by the West Central region of Unity Worldwide Ministries, and the title of the seminar was Healthy Congregations. And I don't think a quarantine was what they had in mind at the time, but it works. And we're working to try to keep everyone healthy, and thus begins a great experiment. We've not done this before. As I said, we had a couple of dry runs, but we certainly appreciate those who have been able to join us on Facebook Live. And as some of you have already commented, and if you're not aware of it, you can comment on what you're seeing. Just be kind is all I ask. And I see that some folks have commented. I'm looking over there at the monitor right now. Unfortunately, I don't see how to scroll down to be able to read those, but we are going to look at them. And the other thing is, basically, you know, it's interesting to be talking to what is essentially an empty room. It kind of reminds me of the days way back when I did some radio work. And you just don't know if anybody is laughing at your lame jokes or anything. I mean, Karen and Diana and so on can only laugh so loud at my bad jokes. So if you want to chime in with a laugh or a groan, I suppose you could put in the comment, laugh, groan, whatever it might be. But again, all I ask for is be kind. And one more thing, since we're obviously not passing out any bulletins, you don't have a handout that I usually give you with some of the key quotes and ideas. Not yet, but all you have to do is to open up another window and go to our website, www.unityofauburn.com. And over on the left side, about halfway up, you're going to see something that says blog. And that is where we're going to be putting the information from the handout, so everyone can get to it and open it up now and look at it now or later. The other thing I want to call your attention to on that home page, unityofauburn.com, at the top on the right there is a button that says donate. That will open a PayPal window where you can make a love offering, and we ask that you please consider doing that, because we want to be here in however long it takes us to be able to come together again in person. And of course, you can always still mail in offerings. You can sign up for credit card donations, or better yet, do a direct transfer from your bank account so that we avoid those credit card fees. And we're going to have an update for you sometime this coming week to let you know some of the financial projections that our treasurer has been working on. I can tell you that the board has spent a lot of time talking about this because we want to once again be a healthy congregation, all of us, both physically and financially as well when we come through on the other side. And with that, I think we segue actually quite nicely back to our Healthy Congregations workshop that I talked about at the beginning. It was facilitated by Martha Creek, who is a wonderful and I think a very funny presenter. And she started off with this really interesting and possibly controversial idea that became the theme for the entire program. So here's the idea. She says, there is no way to do it wrong. What if you really believed that this was true of life? So how are we reacting to that right now? Perhaps some of us are thinking along these lines. We're saying to ourselves, well, that's just plain wrong. How can you say there's no way to do it wrong? There is a right way and a wrong way to do everything, and everyone knows that we have to make sure we're always trying to do everything the right way. And if you're not sure what the right way is, don't worry. I know what it is, and I'll be happy to tell you. Isn't it interesting how we've been programmed somehow by our culture to be a bunch of fault finders? We're not encouraged to look for the good. Instead, we're supposed to look for what's wrong, and then make sure that everybody knows that we found something wrong. There's people on TV that they call pundits who like to do that. In the real world, we use other words for people that do that kind of stuff. The word gadfly comes to mind, but there are also more colorful words that I will leave to your imagination for the people that are constantly fault-finding and wanting you to know that they know there's something wrong and they broadcast it and that kind of thing. And the other thing that we do in addition to fault-finding is that we end up bypassing the good in favor of something that we call perfection. We create these models of perfection that we want everyone and everything and every situation to conform to, and the truth is that few people and few situations can live up to that kind of a standard. And then we wonder why we're always feeling tired and stressed out. And this is a trend that I've noticed for a couple of years now. We're letting the perfect become the enemy of the good. That's based on something that Voltaire once said, the perfect is the enemy of the good. I mean, certainly we want to strive for excellence, but we also have to remember to appreciate the good. And I know a lot of good people. And I'm sure a lot of you do too. We all know a lot of good people, but I'm not sure I've ever met a perfect person. Although Karen comes about as close as I've encountered in my life. But even though I've never met a totally perfect person, I can tell you that I have met a few perfectionists. And I think there's a little bit of a difference. A perfectionist is not something that anyone wants to be called, do they? I mean, has it ever been a compliment to be called a perfectionist? It's kind of an insult. When we hear the word perfectionist, we think of words like nitpicker, obsessive, type A, impossible to please. None of that is good. And our religious traditions kind of get in the way here as well. Growing up, I got a mixed message from religion because they start out, at least with my Catholic background, they start out teaching us that children are not even born in a state of original goodness. I mean, forget about perfection. We're not born in a state of goodness, but we're born in a state of original sin. We're born flawed and wrong right from the start. I mean, forget about perfect, forget about even good for that matter. We're born so sinful that we have to hurry up quick, get baptized before we can even talk, that kind of thing. And I don't want it to sound like I'm picking on the Catholics here, because the Protestant traditions have something that I think is maybe even a little bit worse, called Calvinism, which basically says that not only are human beings born sinful, we are utterly depraved. Wow. So then we get a mixed message when we read the Gospels. We go to Matthew 5, where Jesus tells us this. He says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Hey, Jesus seems to think that we can do it. he seems to think that we can achieve some standard of perfection, and in fairness to Jesus, he didn't create the doctrine of original sin or Calvinism. Human beings, we did that to ourselves, all by ourselves. But Jesus clearly thinks that we're capable of being perfect. Now later on in chapter 6, he tells us this, and this is actually some pretty good advice for right now. He says, don't worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? So I put those two passages together in my head, and I get this. Don't worry, be happy, but make sure you're perfect. So which one is it, Jesus? Because I have a little trouble with this, at least at my human level. Don't worry or be perfect, because I can't seem to find a way to get those two things to work together comfortably. I get anxious sometimes just thinking about it. How can you not worry when you're trying to be perfect? And what does it even mean to be perfect? You know, it's not like we're in a dog show, you know. You watch a dog show. That's one of my favorite things to do every Thanksgiving Day. They have that dog show on in the afternoon, and they have these written standards of perfection for every breed in a show, which means that this girl up here, let's see if we got our buddy Tara up there, our golden retriever Tara, based on these breed standards, stands a much better chance of ever being declared perfect than I ever will. I mean, look at her. I think you can kind of see her there. I hope it's coming through on the screen. A beautiful golden retriever, and she's not worried about it. She doesn't care about breed standards. As far as she's concerned, the universe revolves around her, and human beings exist for the sole purpose of petting her and telling her how beautiful she is. That's what she lives for. And the other thing is she gets to go to the park. She gets to roll in the grass. She loves that. And if there's some goose or turkey droppings around that she can grind in, so much the better. She loves being a dog. She has no problem with her self-image. She knows who she is. She's perfectly comfortable in her own fur. And that's the way I think it can be for us too. When we take those two passages from Matthew, don't worry, be perfect, it gives us what I like to consider a profound koan for reflection and meditation. That comes to us from certain Zen Buddhist traditions where they use koans, these riddles or stories that they work with during training. And this is a definition that comes from this monastery where I spent some time. A koan is an apparently paradoxical statement of questions used in Zen training to induce in the student an intense level of doubt, allowing them to cut through conventional and conditioned descriptions of reality and see directly into their true nature. And that's really what this all comes back to, is using this to get to our true nature. You know, I've been listening to a lot of the different meditations that are out there now at this time being put out by different teachers, and one of the things they encourage us to do is that they may start by inviting us to look outside if we're looking for a source of comfort or inspiration or strength. But they always, always, always bring it back to right here. Whatever it is that we're looking for, it's within us, it's within each other. And that's where it's always been, but it's difficult to see. So don't worry and be perfect sets up one of those paradoxical koan type things. Alan Watts, who was a well-known Zen teacher, calls this a double bind. It's like telling someone to act naturally or to do a relaxation exercise, right? Raises some doubt, raises a little confusion, and all of that is a good signal that we just need to sit with it and take it deeper. It's an invitation to cut through those conventional and conditioned notions of who we are and see maybe directly into our own true nature. We hear Jesus, we hear other people using the word perfect, and what do? We immediately go to this conventional, conditioned notion of what perfect means and how it applies to us. We get into our dog show mentality, I guess, which really keeps us stuck at a superficial level of reality. We end up gawking and spending time on superficial things instead of focusing on the matters at hand, the great matters at hand. Questions like, how should we live? And how can we bring more goodness and kindness into the world at a time like this, which is what we need. Alan Watts talks about something called the taboo against knowing who you are. And he says, the most strongly enforced of all known taboos is the taboo against knowing who or what you really are behind the mask of your apparently separate, independent, isolated ego. And we have our ways of enforcing that taboo. Religion has ways of putting us in a position of subservience and groveling before some kind of an imperial deity and making us unworthy peasants, utterly depraved things in need of salvation. And that's not helpful. That's not helpful. What we really want here is a new level of awareness, call it a new level of consciousness. And a lot of this isn't particularly new. Alan Watts likes to paraphrase an ancient Hindu parable which goes like this. He says, God is the self of the world, but you can't see God for the same reason that without a mirror, you can't see your own eyes. And you certainly can't bite your own teeth or look inside your head. Your self is that cleverly hidden because it is God hiding. The true self is God in hiding. Our job is to simply recognize that and then live in accordance with that truth. And that takes faith, because faith, is, as I define it, is living in accordance with what we know to be true, trusting in what we know to be true. And I just want to give a little time to the world of science. We have the words of Erwin Schrödinger, who is one of the pioneers of quantum physics, who says something that I thought was remarkably similar to what we heard from Alan Watts. Schrödinger says, inconceivable as it seems to ordinary reason, you and all other conscious beings as such are all in all. Hence, this life of yours which you are living is not merely a piece of the entire existence, but is in a certain sense the whole. Only this whole is not so constituted that it can be surveyed in one single glance. So we have to keep looking for it. We have to keep coming back to it. That's from Erwin Schrödinger, My View of the World. And of course, then we have Jesus, who says, very simply, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So now we take a look at that again from a new perspective, and I think what we see is that Jesus is inviting us to recognize and accept who we truly and naturally are. Notice that he doesn't say, try to be perfect. He doesn't say, strive to be perfect, or work to be perfect, or try this 5-step self-help method to be perfect. He just says, be. Be perfect, like it's something natural and intuitive. In Zen, they say that you don't become a Buddha by sitting and meditating. You're already a Buddha who happens to be sitting there and meditating. Or a golden retriever rolling on something in the grass. Love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, because they, like you, are all in all. God hiding. We start right there, and it's sufficient. There's no way to do it wrong. You know, I was always taught that sainthood was something reserved for people who had achieved some kind of unachievable state of perfection. And I would suggest maybe that we let go of that and come up with a new definition of saint. Let's come up with something that applies to all of us. You know, the concept of a saint, when we look at it that way, means someone who is trying to do the greatest good for the most people to the best of their capacity. We don't want to let some impossible standard of perfection stand in the way of working for the good and being good and kind to each other. So I'm going to close today with a couple last quotes. This first one is from a couple of secular saints known as Bill and Ted, who had an excellent adventure back in 1989. And remember what Bill and Ted urged us to do? They urged us to be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. That's for the young folks out there, but I think that's excellent advice. Be excellent to each other. But we're going to give the last word today to another secular saint by the name of Myrtle Fillmore, who was one of Unity's co-founders. And this is what she said, and just kind of see how this fits into what we've been hearing already about this intelligence that we have within us. She says, I can see her up there shaking her fingers. So get busy. Get busy by using the truth you know. Trust the truth you know. Get busy by using the truth you know. Love those about you in a practical way. Pay no attention to what others are doing insofar as to make comparisons. Bring forth your own joyous world of love, friendship, beauty, and plenty. God is giving everything required to build such a world. There is within you the God-given intelligence to build such a world. Get at it. Get at it, she says. Well, we're gonna try this again next week. We're gonna keep doing this for as long as it takes us to get through this. If there were some glitches along the way, we're going to try to do better. We're supposed to be able to save this video on our Facebook page, and if we can make that happen, be sure to let people know that it's available, because then you can watch it not in real time, but you'll still get to see it. And also, if you know some people that might enjoy being able to see this, and maybe they need a little help with Facebook or technology in general, figure out if there's a way that you can reach out to them, within the health department guidelines, of course, to let them know that it's available. We're also going to continue to post video on YouTube, and as always, the audio will be available on our website as well.